Chapter 81. Divine Flame Cult. Riley frowned at what the man said. He glanced over at Haryanto, and Haryanto walked over to the computer in the room. Haryanto turned on the computer and he raised his hands. His hands glowed with a white glow, and the white glow darted into the computer. Imagery from the CCTV in the room came onto the screen. Dr. Uva held a pistol in his hand, walked down from the second floor when he heard sounds coming from the living room. It was his maid being dragged away by men dressed in black. He raised his pistol and warned the men. But a bright flash appeared, blinding everyone, and when the camera was finally able to adjust back from the bright flash, Dr. Uva was gone. Haryanto fast-forwarded the video, and after 10 minutes, the two men wearing the flame necklace came into the mansion. "What did you want from Dr. Uva?" Riley turned around and asked the two men. Even though they weren't the ones that kidnapped Dr. Uva, they had some motives of their own. "Tui." One of the men spat on the ground and said, "Dar. Uva? He is just a devil trying to stop the inevitable. Demonic beasts were sent from the Divine One to make us whole and be with nature. We are here to force him to stop his research." "The Divine One? Who's that?" Riley was just as confused as the other team members. "People like you don't deserve to know." "Well, I'm sure the security forces would know," Riley said, and he glanced over at Haryanto. He wanted Haryanto to search for information about Dr. Yui's research before he called the security forces on his phone. Haryanto nodded his head and started to look for information on Dr. Yui's research. Standing by the side, Lucas frowned and shook his head at the two men tied up. The Divine One sounded like a cult leader, and these men must have been brainwashed by the Divine One. Who in their right mind would think of the demonic beasts as some cute cuddly animals? All the entertainment provided by the likes of Zack, making the demonic beasts seem harmless, must have contributed a lot to it. "Found it," Haryanto said as he opened a file hidden deep within many levels of folders. The file opened with a title of Harmonizing Demonic Beast Blood Serum for Control of Their Mind. Lucas couldn't help but feel that it sounded like something that the Shadow Lotus might have used in the devices to create the Beast Horde. "So, this was what the Shadow Lotus used for the devices?" he said as he looked at the research paper that was on the screen. Riley and the other team members weren't sure, and they glanced at each other. "I will report to the director what happened," Riley said, and he picked up his phone and called Rodney. "What? He would never work for the Shadow Lotus. I can vouch for him. Investigate whether he was kidnapped by Peter Lim. Peter Lim is one of the tycoons there, and he was the one allegedly supplying the Shadow Lotus with the devices. The security forces at the West Battle Administration area are trying to investigate him, but they were met with political resistance," Rodney said after he heard what had happened. After giving out a long sigh, Riley ended the call and told Lucas and the other team members what Rodney had told him. "Useless fools." Rex cursed at the news of Peter Lim being protected by politicians bought by him. "How do we get near Peter Lim, though?" Lucas asked, as Peter Lim would be surrounded by guards and be on full alert by now. It would be next to impossible for them to barge in publicly and take Peter Lim by force. And that was if Peter Lim showed his face in public. Awakened aren't supposed to wreak havoc within the city with their abilities by law. "We will figure it out back in the hotel. But first," Riley said and glanced over at the two men that were tied up. After half an hour's wait, the security forces arrived at Dr. Yui's mansion. Riley briefed them that they came to visit Dr. Uva but found two suspicious men lurking inside. So, they apprehended them thinking that they were burglars. But they apparently wanted to do more, and Dr. Uva was also coincidentally missing. "These aren't burglars. They are from the Divine Flame Cult, going around killing researchers. You've helped us a lot by apprehending them. As for Dr. Uva, I will set up a task force to investigate his whereabouts. Stay contactable while we investigate," the security force officer said as his men were busy gathering evidence in the background. Riley and the team then left and made their way back to the hotel. Lucas looked out into the streets as the billboards flashed by. The billboards with Zack's face on them passed by him as the car traveled along the road. He thought about the ridiculousness of it all. How Zack and his team had made the clearing of demonic beasts into a sport. Wait! Lucas suddenly exclaimed as he recalled something. What happened? Haryanto, who was sitting beside him, turned over and asked. Lucas took out his phone and searched for the TV program that he had watched earlier in the hotel. When he found it, he played the video on speaker. Thanks, but it's our duty to do so. I'd also like to take this opportunity to invite others to join my team on a mission and have the chance to shake hands with Peter Lim at his birthday party. Zack's words sounded loudly in the car. I think I've figured it out, Lucas said, and the other team members nodded with an impressed look and gave him a thumbs up. The taxi driver thought they were one of those awakened teams trying to gain fame like Zack, and he said, You can sign up for it at the West Battle Administration Area Broadcast Corporation. He interjected and glanced carefully at the passengers. They looked like they were from out of town. All of them looked like veteran awakened except for Lucas. He sighed and said, It's worth a try to pursue your dreams. Chapter 82. The show. Yeah, we are new here, and it should be one of the fastest ways to establish ourselves. Mind if you tell us more details about this show? Riley gave the driver a polite smile and asked for more information. The driver sat up straight and began to tell Riley and the team what it was about. Participants would join Zack in a mission outside of the city. And those who hunted the most demonic beasts would be the winners to have the chance to meet Peter Lim at his birthday party held in his mansion. Lucas was glad when he heard what the show was about. It would be a great chance for him to harvest more slaughter points again. And of course, to meet the man responsible for causing so much death and suffering to the South Battle Administration area. Lucas and the team then decided to go to the Broadcast Corporation the next day to register as participants. Next day, West Battle Administration Area Broadcast Corporation. Lucas and the team arrived at the Broadcast Corporation and had to get through a huge crowd of people to reach the security checkpoint. The crowd was waving posters of Zack and the Blitz team. They cheered and chased after a limousine when they saw Zack and the Blitz team sitting inside. You'll get used to it, the security guard said as he led Lucas and the team into a studio. They were used to the Fnatic fans by now. Are Zack and his team really that good? Rex frowned and asked as he glanced over at the fanfare Zack and his team were receiving. The security guard slapped the back of his head and gave Rex an awkward smile. I wouldn't know for sure, the security guard said and pointed at a woman standing on a stage in the studio. There's the producer? Go and register with her. Thanks. Lucas thanked the security guard and walked over to the producer with the team. Well, what do we have here? The producer said, and she started inspecting Lucas closely when she saw him. The producer, Helen, with a crop of long silky black hair tied up in a ponytail, started to walk around Lucas in a circle. Excellent, excellent, she mumbled to herself, and her voice slowly grew louder. Lucas was young and better looking than Zack. There was no way she was going to let him slip out of her hands. She must get him on the show, Helen thought. A plan had already hatched in her mind. The young up-and-coming rival to Zack, and how Zack would overcome difficulties at the last moment to win over the young rival. Tale as old as time. Please tell me you are here to participate in the show with Zack. She finally stopped and asked. Yes, we are. Lucas replied, much to the delight of Helen. Helen clapped her hands and shouted, Get them ready for the shoot. Assistants quickly swarmed onto them. Getting them seats and makeup artists got them ready as Helen briefed them. The show will be a live-streamed show. We will only be shooting in the green zone where there will be low-tiered demonic beasts. I hope you are good enough to deal with them? Lucas shrugged his shoulders and said, Yeah, we've dealt with them before. Humph. We can even handle high-tiered demonic beasts. Rex smirked and said. When Helen heard Rex, she glanced over at the cameraman standing at a distance with his camera rolling. It was what she wanted. The audience would be so pumped up with what Rex had said, boasting of being able to deal with high-tiered demonic beasts. High-tiered demonic beasts? That would be so scary for all of us. Helen replied, faking a concerned look. Rex frowned and said, Haven't you heard what happened at the South Battle Administration area? I'm sure you must have fought valiantly in the South Battle Administration area, Helen said, and the staff snickered uncontrollably. They've seen so many awakened teams coming to seek fame when most of them were cowards when faced with actual dangers. Helen and her staff figured that Lucas and the team were one of those. What's with that response? We are from the South Battle Administration area. Rex wasn't too pleased with their response. Helen glanced over at the cameraman again. This burly man was giving her treasures every minute. She thought. Lucas saw Helen's eye movement and he nudged Rex. Rex realized he might have talked too much and he quickly kept quiet. Great. Now that the makeup is done, you can wait for the show to start recording, Helen said, and she walked to her control room eagerly. When she entered her control room, her editor was already editing what Rex had said. The video started rolling with close-up of Lucas and the other team members, with a voice-over introducing their names and ability level. After a blank transition, the voice-over started introducing them. Will this awakened team be able to beat Zack's teams and win? This team is not like any other teams. The scene then transitioned to Rex smirking and saying how they've dealt with high-tiered demonic beasts before. The next scene was Helen talking about how scared they were of high-tiered demonic beasts, and Rex smirking got cut in again. Lastly, it was the scene of how Rex talked about them being from the South Battle Administration area. The voiceover came on again. Will Zack be able to defend West Battle Administration area's honor? Helen was impressed with the edit, and she patted the editor on the shoulder. Upload it to the show's website and hick-hock immediately, she said impatiently. The show starts in an hour, and she wanted to ramp up the tension and get more views when the show started. Done. As you speak, the editor said, and his computer began giving out sounds of notifications. The video had garnered over 1,000 comments in a short span of time. Who do they think they are? Zack would show them who is boss. High-tiered demonic beasts, my ass. I bet they've never encountered anything stronger than a chicken. Chicken? A worm. Helen grinned when she saw the comments cursing at Lucas and the team. Let the show begin, she said, and gave out a huge laugh. Chapter 83, Out into the Cold. The live stream started rolling and viewers came into the channel to watch immediately. Other than Lucas and the other team members, there were several awakened teams that came onto the stage. Most notably of them all, the Blitz team with Zack leading the way. Comments started rolling in when Zack appeared. That's our Zack. Always so cool and calm. Look at the other teams. They don't stand a chance at all. Maybe Zack should take a break first and let the other teams have an hour's worth of handicap. The fans of the Blitz team were confident in their hero and praised Zack. Zack then started to shake hands with the other awakened teams. That's our Zack. Always so polite. How I wish to be one of the awakened up there now. I wouldn't ever wash my hands again after having a handshake with Zack. Their praises stopped when the camera showed Zack shaking hands with Riley, Emma, Haryanto. When Zack shook hands with Rex, the comments went wild. Isn't that the guy boasting about how their team can handle high-tiered demonic beasts? Yeah, that's him. Just as I thought. He looks like the stereotype I had in mind. Rex clenched his hands tight when he saw the comments on the big screen that was in front of the participants. Zack's face turned red from the pain, and he tried to pull it back. He thought he heard his bones cracking when Rex stared at him with a look of vengeance. Lucas nudged Rex again to remind him of their mission. With an unwilling sigh, Rex let go of Zack's hand. I pity Zack, being angry with the man but still having to try and be polite. Definitely, I would give the man a beating on the spot if I were Zack. Zack is an angel compared to that brute. When the audience saw Zack's face reddened, they thought Zack was angry with Rex, but he kept his cool and shook hands with Rex. Zack walked over to Lucas next, while cursing silently at Rex. He was perturbed and didn't know why Rex was angry at him. So far in show business, Helen had taken care of everything, and it was the first time he encountered someone hostile to him. His breath nearly stopped when he saw Lucas. You! Zack wanted to exclaim how good-looking Lucas was, but stopped himself. The camera then quickly zoomed into a close-up of Zack and Lucas facing each other. Lucas was nonchalant about what was going on and only wanted to end it quickly so that they could get to Peter Lim. The comments went wild again. This young man, he is just as handsome as Zach. Oh my, look at him like he is without a care in the world. I'm sorry, Zach, but I think I need to make space for one more man in my heart. Too bad he is with that boastful brute of a man. Hope Zach can be merciful and take him in after the show. Many of them lamented the fact that Lucas was with Rex and the other team members, and it was too bad that he would have to go up against Zach and the Blitz team. Helen smirked as she watched the statistics going up. 10K, 20K, 100K. Soon, it went up to 500K concurrent viewers, making the show's livestream #1 in the rankings. It was a record for her, and her smirk turned into a grin when she thought about what she had in store later. Edge of West Battle Administration Area. Lucas and the other team members arrived at the edge of the city in a posh limousine provided by the producer. When he stepped out of the limousine, he immediately saw that the atmosphere was a world of difference from the South Battle Administration Area. The wall that encircled the West Battle Administration Area was twice as tall and covered in a thick surface of ice. Visually, Lucas figured that the ice was at least 30 feet thick. They were led to the checkpoint, and Lucas saw the soldiers' behavior was the same as at the airbase. All they cared about was getting an autograph from Zach. Not many were still on alert the moment they saw him. Either Zach's appeal was so strong, or they must not have faced real and imminent dangers from the demonic beasts for a very long time. Lucas thought to himself silently. He was much more convinced it was the latter. From what he saw, it was just entertainment to them clearing out the demonic beasts outside of the wall. After clearing the checkpoint, they were led outside of the wall. Lucas saw that instead of the woods with lush greenery they had in the South Battle Administration Area, it was chilling white snow covering the forest. Trees had no leaves on them, but only snow covering the branches. Before we begin, let me brief you on where it is safe to venture. The staff member leading them held up a screen and shouted. He pointed at areas marked in green on the screen and said, "These are safe hunting grounds. You'll find only low-tiered demonic beasts around this area. Do not venture too far off, as we can't guarantee what you'll encounter out of these areas." The other awakened teams nodded. They weren't about to risk their lives, as they were recruited by Helen to make Zach look good. Lucas raised his hand and said, "Which areas have the most demonic beasts?" The staff member was stumped for a moment. Helen rubbed her hands and quickly spoke into the mic from her control room. "Tell him where it is." Someone rage bait in the chat quickly. Staff sitting beside her got to work immediately. "I thought they could handle high-tiered demonic beasts? And here he is, asking where the demonic beasts are so they can avoid them. Ha 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 ha. Now that you say it in this manner, I think you are right. And I was thinking this young man would be different from the others. There goes the competition for someone that could be as good as Zach." Her staff succeeded, and the comments came in thinking that Lucas was trying to avoid the areas where it was dangerous. Chapter 84. Slaughter Points. The staff member briefing Lucas and the others did as instructed by Helen. Here are the areas that are known to have more demonic beasts roaming around. Sometimes you might encounter mid-tiered demonic beasts around the area too. We would have drones following all of you, and if you feel that you are in danger, raise your hands at the drones and we will dispatch help to get you out. Lucas noted down the areas and nodded his head. He walked over to Riley and whispered his plan to Riley. "I will try and kill as many as I can and get this over and done with." Riley thought for a moment and nodded. He knew that Lucas was able to kill a skeletal tiger by himself, and these low-tiered or mid-tiered demonic beasts weren't a threat to him and the team. So he glanced over at Rex, Emma, and Haryanto, and they nodded at him. The comments had a field day when they saw what happened. Look at them, already planning for a retreat. How did they get through the audition? Are their ability statuses even real? I recall they were all SSS and SS level. Must have faked it. The audience started to come up with all sorts of allegations from their imagination. Helen was pleased as the concurrent viewer number was now at 600K. If there are no further questions, let the hunt begin. The staff member briefing Lucas and the other awakened teams raised his hand and announced the start of the hunt. A table with the number of demonic beasts killed appeared on the screen of the audience. Zack and his team calmly walked towards their prearranged area. The other awakened teams did the same and went on their way to the areas Helen allocated. All eyes were on Lucas and his teammates. Lucas turned towards the direction where there were lots more demonic beasts and even mid-tiered demonic beasts. Whoosh! He leaped away and the other teammates followed behind. The drones with cameras quickly flew and chased after them. The screen for the audience then split into views from these drones. Comments started pouring in again. Wait! Where are they heading? I might be wrong, but isn't that where many demonic beasts lurk? So, they are not only boastful but stupid? Hope that handsome guy, Lucas, calls it quits once he realizes how wrong they were. 650K. That was the number of concurrent viewers when she checked again. She turned over to the staff member beside her and said, "Release the domesticated fire deer for Zack to pick them off." The staff member nodded his head and pressed a button on the control panel in front of him. 2 fire deer appeared out of a secret opening and walked towards Zack and the Blitz team. "Look, 2 fire deer. Relax. Zack should be able to handle them. It's a first, but I have confidence in Zack." The audience was right as they saw Zack unleash a slicing wave from his hands. Splatter. Heads of the fire deer got sliced off and dropped to the ground, splattering the blood from the wounds onto the ground. The table was updated in real time, and Zack and the Blitz team got to the top. The audience got into a celebratory mood quickly. Heh! See, what did I tell you? Oh my! Zack is dependable and strong as usual. I think I'm ovulating just from what I have witnessed. Shut up. That's gross. They were swooning over what they saw, but someone suddenly pointed out something. Look at the team from the South Battle Administration area. Why? They already pissed their pants and gave up. Ha ha ha. That would be a record if they did so. No. I'm serious, look. The audience turned their focus onto the screen showing what Lucas and his teammates were doing. Lucas was standing in front of 10 fire deer. He glanced back to check, and his teammates gave him an assuring look. After the battle defending the wall, this was nothing to them compared to what they had gone through together. The audience watching in the safety of their homes, cafes and offices gasped at what they saw. Flickers of light flashed as Riley unleashed a lightning strike at one of the fire deer. Wham! The lightning strike hit, and the fire deer was blown into pieces. The comments started to pop off. SSS-level lightning strike. No wonder they are confident enough. But lightning abilities need some time to accumulate for the next strike again. How will they manage? The other team members are either decorations or they have something up their sleeves. I can't bear to watch. Just give up right away. They figured that after Riley released his lightning strike, Lucas and the team would be defenseless against the fire deer. Their mouths opened wide when they saw flickers of light appear on Lucas's hands next. Lucas lunged at the remaining fire deer and unleashed 2 lightning strikes at them. Wham! The lightning strikes hit and 3 of the fire deer were blown into pieces. Their limbs and parts of their bodies were hurled into the air and splattered onto the white snowy ground. A familiar sound erupted in Lucas's mind. Ding! Slaughter points plus 300. Current slaughter points, 1100/20,000. Host level, 5. Current abilities, 5. Fireballs appeared in front of the remaining 6 fire deer, and they aimed their heads at Lucas. The audience stopped breathing and focused intensely on what would happen next. He is done for now. No way there's enough time for him to unleash his lightning strike again. Too young. Having the power but not the brains. They thought Lucas was done for now after unleashing his lightning strike like Riley. The audience's typing stopped halfway, fingers halting on their keyboards when they saw flickers of light appearing on Lucas's hands again. Wham! Lucas unleashed 2 lightning strikes at the remaining fire deer. It hit and 3 of the fire deer were taken out again. He didn't stop an ice spike shot from the sky at the last 3 fire deer. Splatter! The ice spikes penetrated the bodies of the fire deer, and their innards splattered onto the ground. How is this possible? He can do what? Unleash so many lightning strikes in such a short period of time. And where did the ice spikes come from?
Chapter 85. A tie?
Maybe it's from the other team members. The audience wondered where the ice spikes came from, and they could only speculate that it was from Lucas's team members. Lucas felt a surge of energy coming back to him as they commented furiously on the live stream. The next moment, a familiar sound erupted in his mind. Ding! Slaughter points plus 600. Current slaughter points, 1700/20,000. Host level, 5. Current abilities, 5. Riley and the others by now were used to it. Hey! Save some of the demonic beasts for us, Rex grunted. I will try to. Lucas shrugged as he used his knife to cut open the fire deer carcasses, harvesting their demonic beast cores. The ranking table on the screen changed, with Lucas and the team overtaking Zack and the Blitz team with 10 kills. Fans of Zack weren't too happy with it. Zack's just unlucky that he didn't encounter as many fire deer. Tell them, sister. It's just the start of the competition. Zack will do fine given the time. Don't you find it weird? I don't know. But there must be something going on with Lucas's ability. Is he on drugs or something? It might even be the show's organizers cheating for Lucas. They started to try and find excuses for Zack's performance and accuse Lucas of cheating. Helen in the control room was surprised by Lucas easily killing off 9 fire deer. She frowned for a moment and glanced over at the staff next to her. Release 8 more fire deer. The staff hesitated and said, 8? Zack hasn't dealt with that many before, I think. Smack. Helen smacked the back of the staff's head and shouted, See this. You better do what I say and not mess it up for everyone. Think about all the bonus you can get if we push it to 1 million. She pointed to the concurrent viewership number, which was now at 700K. The staff let out a sigh and pushed a button on the control panel. Look, so many fire deer. Watch out, Zack. Praying for Zack to be safe and sound. Comments scrolled furiously when they saw the number of fire deer coming up toward Zack. Zack was equally perturbed as the audience. The producer had never done anything like this before. Even though those unleashed were domesticated fire deer, they still posed some threat to him if they went wild. He glanced over at the drone hovering above him. But the drone just gave out its buzzing sound from its propellers. There weren't any signals from the producer. Zack knew that there was only one option left for him. Boom! A fireball shot at him and he dodged it in the nick of time. Do your job? Help me? Zack shouted at his teammates as he got up and swiped his hands across, sending out a slicing wave toward the fire deer. His teammates startled for a moment before activating their abilities. Zack had always chastised them if they tried to help him kill off the demonic beasts, saying that they were trying to steal his limelight. They begrudgingly got to work and the 4 of them took on a fire deer each. Finally, these lazy bum teammates of Zack are helping out. After all this, while I thought they were servants of Zack. Time for Zack to change teammates. That Lucas would be a great candidate. The audience started to dream about having Lucas team up with Zack. They certainly didn't mind such a handsome young man joining Zack. As the fire deer got killed one by one, the ranking table on the screen got updated. And soon, Zack's team was in a tie with Lucas's team. Helen glanced over at the concurrent viewership and saw that it was now 800K. She began to think of ways to push it further. You still have the Ember Elephant? She tapped the shoulder of the staff beside her. The staff frowned and said, Zack's not going to make it through with the Ember Elephant. Helen smirked and said, Who said it's for Zack? Meanwhile, Lucas and the other team members got deeper into the woods. They got to a clearing, and they encountered a herd of fire deer. When the largest of the fire deer within the group of 15 fire deer saw them, it raised its head and let out a loud grunt. Before the other fire deer could react, Lucas lunged at the leader of the fire deer. 5 fireballs appeared in front of the fire deer's forehead. Wham! Lucas unleashed a lightning strike at the fire deer, and it fried the fire deer immediately. Its head was now charred black with its fur burnt off, giving off a smell of burnt flesh. The fireballs dissipated as the fire deer dropped to the ground, twitching for a few moments before lying motionless. Fire deer near Lucas lowered their heads and charged at him with their antlers that were engulfed in flames. Let's see how he handles it. No way out now, huh? His lightning strike can't save him now. I can't watch it. Tell me what happens next. The audience thought Lucas would be done for this time as the fire deer were too numerous. Wham! Lucas unleashed lightning strikes with both of his hands at the fire deer charging at him directly. The lightning strikes hit, and the fire deer exploded into a red mist with pieces of flesh hurled into the air. He had struck down 6 of the fire deer in an instant. 2 fire deer came from both of his sides and charged at him. The audience gasped when they saw the 2 fire deer suddenly stopping. Lucas had used his shadow wielder ability and held on to both the shadows of the fire deer's antlers. He stretched out his hands and with a wham, unleashed lightning strikes at the 2 fire deer. 8 down, 7 more to go, Lucas thought. The audience watched intently at Lucas, and they were surprised to see that Lucas didn't look tired. From what they knew, those with lightning abilities would be tired by now. Every lightning strike unleashed would have taken out much of their energy. However, it didn't seem to be applicable to Lucas. Chapter 86. Mid-tiered demonic beasts? They were right as Lucas unleashed 2 more lightning strikes at the remaining 7 fire deer. Wham! The lightning strikes hit and 5 of the fire deer immediately perished. All that was left of them were flesh and warm blood that pooled into the chilling white snow. Lucas then lunged at the last 2 fire deer. He pulled back his fist and gave one of the fire deer a left hook at its neck. Bladder. His fist punched through the neck of the fire deer and the blood and flesh spurted out from the other side of the neck. He pulled out his fist and flicked the blood away from his fist. The last fire deer tried to run away but couldn't. Something was holding onto its legs. It conjured up a fireball and shot it at Lucas as he walked toward it. Whoosh! The fireball missed as Lucas sidestepped from it. He proceeded to raise his hand and after a bright flash, a lightning strike struck at the fire deer. It pulverized the fire deer into pieces. As energy surged back into Lucas's body, a familiar sound erupted in his mind again. Ding! Slaughter points plus 1,500. Current slaughter points 3,200/20,000. Host level 5. Current abilities 5. SSS level physique. Novice 0/3000. SSS level shadow wielder. Novice 0/3000. SSS level summoner. Novice 0/3000. SSS level ice ability. Novice 0/3000. SSS level lightning ability. Adept 0/9000. When he saw the information panel, Lucas was glad that he had enough slaughter points to level up one of his abilities. The comments on the live stream went dead. Silence. There was only silence as the audience digested what they had witnessed. Lucas was much more powerful than they had thought, and Zach's lead was now in danger. The rankings table updated with Lucas and the team being at the top with 25 kills. This was nothing that they had seen before. Usually, it would be 3 to 5 kills from Zach and the winner would be decided. But now, history was made with 25 kills, and even Zach had beaten his own record of 5 kills. What in the world? Maybe they had really dealt with high-tiered demonic beasts before? I'm beginning to doubt myself. Same here. Zach was the top awakened for me for a very long time. But now I'm not so sure. Helen rubbed her temple as she tried to think of a way out for Zach. Her eyes glanced at the concurrent viewership, and she knew she had to do it. 900K concurrent viewership. She was so close now. There was no way she would give it up and not push for 1 million concurrent viewership. Release 15 fire deer for Zach, and... She took a deep breath to calm herself and said, "For our young man here, release the Ember Elephant." The audience couldn't believe their eyes when they saw so many fire deer appear and charging toward Zach. Zach was equally perturbed. Why was Helen doing this? He and his teammates had just dealt with 10 fire deer. Did the other teams do so well that they had killed more than 10 fire deer? He shook his head at the notion. It wasn't possible, he thought. Zack had been acting along for so long that he himself believed the bullshit that was being dished out. Watch out, Zack. Dodge it quick. To your left. There are more fireballs coming to your side. Forget about Zack. Look at what's happening over at Lucas's side. Fireballs hurled at Zack and his teammates. This time, Zack wasn't as lucky and a fireball hit his shoulder. His armor did its job, blocking out most of the damage, but it still caused a wound on his shoulder. However, the audience's attention was being drawn away by what was happening over at Lucas's side. An ember elephant had appeared out of nowhere. They had never seen anything like it before. All the while, they had only seen low-tiered demonic beasts, and it was a first for them to witness a mid-tiered demonic beast. When the ember elephant let out a loud trumpet, the snow on the tree branches fell onto the snowy ground. The audience felt as if their hearts were at their throats. Lucas and his teammates, to their surprise, seemed nonchalant at the sight of the ember elephant. Maybe they had really dealt with an ember elephant before, the audience thought. Whoosh! The ember elephant blew out a gust of flame from its trunk and swept it across at Lucas. Lucas leaped into the air and with both his hands, unleashed lightning strikes at the ember elephant's trunk. Bladder. The ember elephant's trunk got blown off into halves and the part of the trunk that was loose twitched around, blowing out flames in all directions. Plop. Lucas landed and the ember elephant with its reddened eyes charged at him with its tusks engulfed in flames. But it struggled as the ember elephant felt its front legs being pulled forward by something. Using his shadow, Lucas had yanked the front legs of the ember elephant, putting it off balance. Lucas leaped forward and with his hands at close range to the ember elephant's forehead, he unleashed another 2 lightning strikes at it. Crack. The lightning strikes fractured the skull of the ember elephant at close range. Lucas pulled back his arm and gave it a solid right hook. His punch penetrated the skull of the ember elephant, causing huge pain to it, and it tried to thrash around to get Lucas off its head. But it was to no avail as Lucas focused and unleashed a lightning strike within its head. Bladder. Flesh and white matter from within the ember elephant's head splattered out. Smoke also rose from within as the lightning strike fried everything inside. Lucas leaped off from the ember elephant's head and stood in the soft snowy ground. A surge of energy came back into his body and a familiar sound erupted in his mind. Ding! Slaughter points plus 500. Current slaughter points 3,700/20,000. Host level 5. Current abilities 5. The audience and even Helen opened their mouths in astonishment. It was so one-sided. The ember elephant didn't have any chance. Were mid-tiered demonic beasts so weak, or was Lucas so powerful that he made it look easy? While they were trying to make sense of it all, a voice could be heard shouting. Chapter 87. Change of Mind. I give up. Get me out of here. The voice was Zack's as he shouted at the top of his lungs. He was now a far cry from the confident man that he was when the competition had just started. His hair was a mess, and his right eye was bruised and swollen. Blood and mud were all over his face. Every little movement he made when he breathed caused him enormous pain as his ribcage was fractured. If he made any big moves, he was worried his ribcage would puncture into his lungs. Zack limped towards the drone, as his left leg was also fractured, while a fire deer charged at him from behind with its antlers. Ouch! He gave out a loud cry in pain when the fire deer rammed into him from the rear. The audience went silent. This was a scene they'd never imagined they would see before. Zack to them was like a demigod with his looks and victories. But right now, right in front of their eyes, was Zack crying for his life, just like any other person. A tinge of disappointment came to mind. The fact that they'd just witnessed Lucas killing off a mid-tiered demonic beast made it worse for Zack. It was as if they had been lied to about Zack's ability for their entire lives. Soon, the comments poured in after a moment of silence. I can't bear to watch this anymore. Quick! Someone put him out of his misery. Maybe it's time we reconsider who is the top awakened in the West Battle Administration area. They were disappointed but weren't ready to condemn Zack just yet. As the ranking table updated, it didn't matter to them anymore. Helen wasn't too happy with what was happening. The concurrent viewership was dropping, and it didn't even get close to her target of 1,900,000, 850,000, 770,000. Worst of all, she would have to do a lot of PR work to salvage Zach's image after this. In an instant, the situation had gotten out of her control. The mid-tiered demonic beast was supposed to cause rampage and make Lucas give up. Then Zach could swoop in and rescue them from their agony. But the reverse might have to happen instead. There was no awakened team near enough and powerful enough to help Zach. The team members in the other awakened teams she had arranged weren't even awakened. By the time the soldiers got to where Zach and his team were, it would be too late. Emergency. We need you to help get Zach out of a sticky situation. There would be an extra prize of $100,000 for helping. A voice boomed from the drone hovering above Lucas. Lucas shrugged and glanced over at Riley to see what Riley's decision was. Riley walked over and patted him on the shoulder and shouted at the drone, "We'll go and help." He then glanced at Lucas and said, "Take a rest. Let us handle the rest." Lucas nodded and the drone started to lead them to where Zach and his team were. "Bobby, help me," Zach shouted as he tried to climb up a tree to get away from the fire deer that was charging at him from behind. Bobby on his left, however, was busy fending off the fire deer that had its antlers stuck into Bobby's abdomen. Zach could feel the warmth of flames from the fire deer's antlers coming close. He closed his eyes and prepared for the worst. Wham! A loud explosion ensued. Zach felt wet sticky stuff coming onto his hair, face and neck. He touched it with his hand and opened his eyes to see what it was. Zach nearly threw up his guts when he saw that it was flesh and blood from the fire deer that had stuck onto him. He turned around and saw that Riley had unleashed a lightning strike at the fire deer. Emma was helping Bobby by blowing her poison at the fire deer, disintegrating the fire deer's body with the poison. On the further end, Rex with his body covered with rocks charged at one of the fire deer, breaking its spine, and hurling a rock spike at another fire deer. The rock spike gave the fire deer no chance as it penetrated its body. These domesticated fire deer were after all not as strong as fire deer in the wild. Soon, all the fire deer were taken care of by Riley and the others. The audience started to comment again after a long lull. Yes, at least there's someone who can really deliver. Geez, didn't expect Lucas's teammates to be just as courageous. Was that the guy who talked about handling high-tiered demonic monsters? I think that was the guy. He might have been telling the truth after all. The audience cheered as they saw Riley and the other team members killing off the fire deer easily. Some had started to change their view on Rex when they saw him going in courageously to fight against the fire deer. Armored cars came toward them at top speed. When the armored cars stopped, the soldiers alighted with their weapons and untidy uniforms. "Hurry! Where's the healer?" The sergeant of the soldiers shouted, and an awakened in white armor came running towards Zach. The healer placed her hand near Zach's swollen eyes and a white glow appeared in the healer's hand. The white glow then touched onto Zach's swollen eyes and the eyes started to go back to normal as the swelling came down. Zach glanced over at Lucas and the other team members and said, "Thanks." Helen paced around the control room as she tried to think of a way to salvage the situation. Make it so that Zach had done it on purpose so that Lucas would be able to shine? She shook her head and vetoed the idea. It would be too much mental gymnastics for them to believe it. She gave out a long sigh and thought of the unthinkable when she saw the comments that were rolling in furiously. "Lucas, stay on the show. Yes, I don't mind a change of fresh air. Maybe Lucas can show us deeper into the woods and explore the surroundings. You are right. I'm sick and tired of looking at the same low-tiered demonic beasts over and over again." Chapter 88. Party time. Now let's welcome back our participants. And a round of applause to our winner, Team Riley, the host said enthusiastically. Spectators in the studio clapped and gave cheers when Lucas and his teammates walked up the stage. The host proceeded to introduce the other awakened teams next. An awkward pause ensued when Zach and his teammates were introduced. Air. Zach might have been under the weather, but look at him. He has given his best, losing with such a close race. The host tried to make it better for Zach, but it didn't help. The spectators and audience watching the live stream weren't taken in by those words. It was not even a close race. Lucas had even killed off a mid-tiered demonic beast without much effort. Zach lowered his head, which was in bandages, and walked onto the stage, ignoring the silence that he was receiving. It was like a death sentence for him. All his endorsements and gravy train were going to be ended. Congratulations to the winning team again, and here are the prizes you've won. The host then handed Lucas and the team a huge check with the amount $200,000 written on it. Oh, not to forget, you'll be able to attend the most important event in the city soon. That is none other than our favorite tycoon, Peter Lim's birthday. Lucas was glad that things were moving along. They were one step closer to the investigation of Dr. Yui's whereabouts. Thank you everyone for tuning in. See you next week at the same time, the host said, and the screen transitioned to a commercial with Zach promoting an oven. The cameras stopped filming, and the spectators were ushered out of the studio. The host then briefed Lucas and the team where and when to go for the birthday party. He also handed them an invitation card each. When the host was done, Helen came running towards Lucas with a huge smile. Lucas, wait, I've got a proposal for you. A chance to stardom. She waved at him and said, plop. Suddenly, she fell and tumbled across the ground. Arg, my ankle. She cried out in pain and held onto her now swollen ankle. Her assistant quickly came over and helped her up. Lucas glanced over at Riley and said, I think it's time to go. We got what we wanted. Riley nodded and they left the studio. Helen yelled and tried to stop them. She desperately needed Lucas to take over the place of Zach. But her heart sank as she saw them getting further away. She could already hear her boss screaming at her for messing it up. Quick, go and stop him. She yelled at her assistant and her assistant ran after Lucas. But when her assistant got near, Lucas turned his head and stared at her assistant. Chills went down the spine of the assistant and the assistant stopped in her tracks. This was someone who had easily killed off a mid-tiered demonic beast. What are you doing? Helen shouted, but her assistant didn't dare make any move. She tried to stand up, but the pain made her cry out in tears, and she could only wail as she saw them disappearing into the distance. Center Battle Administration Area. The leader's residence. A man sat in a soft red sofa with a wine glass in his hand. He sniffed the aroma from the wine in the glass and then swirled the wine inside. The leader looked young, like someone in his 20s. His short hair was cropped like a student's, but his stern look and eyes that stared like an eagle made him exude an aura of someone in authority. He picked up a photo that looked like it would crumble into pieces at any moment. Inside the photo was a group of young men and women. One of them looked like the leader, giving out a huge smile. There wasn't an air of authority on him yet. At the furthest end of the group was a familiar face. It was Athena. She was young in the photo, and she too had a smile on her. The leader took a sip of the wine and gave out a long sigh. Athena, still fiery and never giving up without a fight as always. He shook his head, and he put down the photo. Memories came flooding into his mind, how they were innocent young folks until the incident happened. And after that, they were no longer the same. He gritted his teeth as anger rose within him, and he stood up. Shadow Lotus had destroyed his plan of making a final push, making use of the other 4 pillars, to kill the Abyssal-level demonic beast. The Abyssal-level demonic beast, which was a level higher than an Apex-level demonic beast, was the root cause for all the demonic beasts lurking in the country. The leader picked up the phone and made a call. After a ring, the chairman of the council picked up the call. Change of plan. We need someone to harvest the blood and core of an apex demonic beast. It would be crucial for the research of the demonic beast genotoxin. The head of the council hesitated for a moment and replied, We'll get to it as soon as possible. The leader ended the call and sipped a mouthful of the wine. It was time for him to do some cleanup of these corrupted officials. Next day, Lucas and the team made their way to the venue of the birthday party. Peter Lim's lavish mansion on the hilltop. Lucas and Haryanto will search for Dr. Uva on the east side of the mansion. Emma, stay in the main dining hall and alert us if there are any changes. Rex and I will search for Dr. Uva on the west side of the mansion. Keep in contact with these. Riley briefed his plan and handed out small earbuds to the others. They put the earbuds on, and they could speak and hear each other. With everything in place, they alighted from the car they'd rented and walked over to the gate of the mansion. Everything went smoothly with their invitation cards. Once they got in, they saw how big the place was. The garden out in the front was as big as 2 football fields. Music was playing loudly with many tents providing entertainment for the guests. Kids and even adults played games common in a circus fair and were enjoying themselves. Lucas pretended to be in awe and glanced around at the surroundings. He tried to memorize the whole area as much as possible. Finally, they got to the main building, and when they entered the main hall, all the guests stopped and glanced over at them. Chapter 89, Wooden Box. These guests were prominent figures in business and politics, and some were here with their spouse or partner. They were well dressed in their best-looking lavish suits and gowns. But it wasn't enough, as they were overshadowed by Emma when the team entered the main hall. Emma looked gorgeous with her head full of red hair and her bright red attire. She held her head up and pouted her lips, which were sporting bright red lipstick. The other female guests weren't too happy. Some stared at her, and some of them could only gossip among themselves. One of the male guests, after some hesitation, came up with 2 drinks in his hands, and he tried to pass one of them to Emma. Emma smiled and took the drink. The other male guests, upon seeing this, went into a frenzy and jostled to ask Emma for a dance. Emma smiled and side-eyed over to the other members of the team. The commotion was a great cover for the other members to start searching for Dr. Uva. Lucas and Haryanto started to move towards the east side of the mansion. At the same time, Riley and Rex got moving towards the west side of the building. The east side of the mansion was where Peter Lim kept most of his collections. There were paintings and sculptures lined on both sides of the long alleyway. There's a CCTV over there. Lucas pointed at a camera overhead in the middle of the alleyway. With his ability, Haryanto might be able to gather some footage from the mansion's security network. Haryanto nodded, and they walked towards the camera. Both pretended to marvel at the paintings and sculptures as they moved along. When servants of the mansion walked by with drinks and food for the guests, they stopped and pretended to talk about the art piece in front of them. This worked, as the servants didn't think much of it. When they got to where the camera was located, Haryanto raised his hand at the camera. A white glow appeared from his hand, and the white glow darted at the camera. Lucas kept a lookout while Haryanto focused on getting the video footage from the security network. Thud. Suddenly footsteps came from the end of the alleyway. Haryanto immediately stopped what he was doing and placed his hand onto the wall. "Is your friend all right?" The servant who was pushing a cart full of bottles of wine asked when he saw Haryanto facing the wall and had his hands on it. "He just had a little too much to drink, the usual when the party gets going. I will help him when he is ready." Lucas smiled at the servant and said. Haryanto pretended to stagger a bit and waved his hand at the servant. The servant scanned both Lucas and Haryanto. Seeing that they were well dressed in their suits, the servant didn't think much of it and pushed his cart along. After the servant disappeared into the other end of the alleyway, Haryanto quickly continued what he was doing. Images came into his mind. There were images of people setting up for the party, and Haryanto dug into videos that were much further back. It was mostly mundane daily activities, servants operating and keeping the mansion in shape. Finally, he saw something that was unusual. A van stopped at the entrance of the main hall, and men unloaded a big wooden box half the height of an adult. They carried the wooden box and turned towards the west side of the mansion. The wooden box was then lifted onto the second floor of the mansion and into a room. It stopped there as there weren't any cameras inside the room. There was a wooden box transported here. It was put into the first room on the mansion's second floor on the west side. Haryanto spoke, and the earbuds picked it up, transmitting what he said to the other team members. "Let's go." Lucas said to Haryanto, and both proceeded to make their way to the west side of the mansion. On the west side of the mansion, Riley and Rex glanced over at each other after they heard Haryanto. There were guards standing at the bottom of the staircase, rejecting entry for anyone. They would have to figure out a way to get through the guards. There are guards blocking entrance to the second floor, Riley said. Lucas, who received Riley's message via the earbuds, started to think of something. Wait for us to arrive, and when you see us, shout at each other and start a commotion. Emma, get ready to unleash something in the main hall after that, he said, as that was the only thing he could come up with in such a short moment. Got it. Seize the opportunity and sneak up to the second floor. Riley immediately knew what Lucas was up to. When Lucas and Haryanto passed through the main hall, Emma, who was dancing with one of the guests, nodded at them. She was also prepared to start a commotion to help them when the time was right. What do you mean you can't pay for the goods? Riley shouted at Rex when he saw Lucas and Haryanto enter the west side of the mansion. The 4 guards standing at the entrance of the staircase and guests who were nearby turned around to see what was happening. We've been doing business for so long and you can't trust me? Rex shouted back at Riley and pulled Riley towards him by his shirt collar. The guards smirked and watched the commotion that was going on. They'd been bored out of their minds for the whole day, and they definitely didn't mind some entertainment to pass their time. Let go of me, Riley shouted and threw a punch at Rex's shoulder. But Rex lifted Riley up into the air with his hands, and he gave out a loud roar. Damn you! Rex threw Riley in the direction of the guards. Thud! Riley slammed into 2 of the guards and knocked them off their feet. The other 2 guards weren't too happy about it, and they tried to catch hold of Riley. Chapter 90. Peter Lim. The 2 guards got near Riley, but they were stopped when they felt their legs being pulled by something. Thud! They fell onto the ground and tried to get up immediately. Lucas had used his shadow wielder ability to yank them off their feet. You think you can get away? The next moment, Rex came charging at Riley. The 4 guards who were in the process of getting up saw Rex's arm coming towards them. Plop! 4 of them fell back onto the ground again. And when their heads hit the ground, they became unconscious. There's a fight breaking out. Go and check it out. Move now. In the security center of the mansion, the head of security pointed at one of the screens and shouted at the security detail. The security detail streamed out from the security center and rushed towards the west side of the mansion. But when they passed through the main hall, a bigger commotion broke out. This time among the prominent guests in the main hall. Many of them were feeling nausea and started to vomit. Emma had released a very minute amount of her poison into the air. It was not enough to kill, but enough to make the guests sick. What's happening? Someone answer me. The head of security frowned when he saw what happened in the main hall. Something was up, he thought. I think the guests are having food poisoning. One of the security guards said. Food poisoning? Take care of the guests and get me the chef now, the head of security shouted, and his staff started scurrying around. A brawl wasn't as important as the esteemed guests of Peter Lim getting sick. The priority was easy for the head of security to make his decision. Lucas and Haryanto quickly sneaked up onto the second floor with all the commotion going on. Guests were worried and didn't know what to do. Many wanted to get out of the mansion to be safe. No one had the attention to focus on Lucas and Haryanto sneaking up to the second floor. Riley and Rex then stood at the entrance of the staircase to be on guard. Meanwhile, inside a huge dark room, Dr. Uva sat in a chair. He was pale and weak from the lack of food and water. Another man stood in front of him. It was Peter Lim, who was in his 40s and had a mustache above his lips. Join me in my research. We are, after all, chasing the same thing, Peter Lim said and smirked. He continued and said, to be precise, I'm 1 step ahead of you. I've managed to control an apex-level demonic beast to create a beast horde attack on the South Battle Administration area. Dr. Uva opened his eyes wide and said, but how? It wasn't possible in his mind. The demonic beasts had a strict hierarchy of command. To be able to influence an apex-level demonic beast meant that Peter Lim would need to have the blood and core of an abyssal-level demonic beast. No one would be able to face an abyssal-level demonic beast and extract its blood and core. I know what you are thinking. I've got help, Peter Lim said, and 3 men stepped out of the shadows. It was Ashen, Leroy, and Risa. These gentlemen here helped me with what I needed. Think about the research you can accomplish if you join, Peter Lim said, trying to entice Dr. Uva. Dr. Uva stared at Peter Lim and said, "We are not the same. My research is to have lasting peace for us, while you are only seeking to wreak havoc and profit from it. And in any case, if you were able to accomplish what you've said, why do you need me?" He wanted to figure out why he was captured by Peter Lim. There must have been something lacking in what Peter Lim had, and he had the answer to it. But before Peter Lim could answer, his phone rang. Peter Lim looked at his phone and picked up the call. It had better be something important. The head of security briefed Peter Lim on what had happened and wanted him to come with him for safety. "Fine. Come to my office on the 2nd floor," Peter Lim said and ended the call. He gave a sigh and glanced over at Ashen. "I need to take care of some matters. Risa, go with Peter Lim and figure out what's happening," Ashen said, and Risa obliged. He followed Peter Lim and got out of the dark room. Lucas and Harrianto were inside Peter Lim's office, trying to find where the wooden box was brought. It was nowhere in sight, and the office, which was 60 by 60 feet wide, wasn't big in size. Lucas stood in front of a bookshelf and inspected it carefully. He saw that the wall behind the shelf had very thin and barely visible lines surrounding the form of the bookshelf. Using his hand, he knocked on the wall beside the bookshelf, trying to figure out whether there was something behind the wall. Knock! He was right as the sound that the wall made sounded hollow. "Harrianto!" He called out to Harrianto, thinking that Harrianto's ability might be able to trigger the bookshelf to move. Harrianto walked over, and to Lucas's surprise, the bookshelf started to make a whirring noise. It depressed into the wall and then slid to the side. Lucas, with his hand in the air, tilted his head and smiled when he saw Peter Lim and Risa standing opposite him. "Who are you?" Peter Lim pointed at Lucas and shouted. Lucas slapped the back of his head and said, "We are looking for the toilet and got lost. Mind if you point us the way to the toilet?" he said and gave out a smile. He placed his left hand to the back of his body and small flickers of lightning appeared when he got ready to strike. Peter Lim fumed and twitched his mouth, making his mustache wriggle like a worm. "You think I'm a 3-year-old kid?" Risa raised his hand at Lucas and a beeping sound could be heard. Chapter 91. Leroy and Risa. Wham! Lucas unleashed a lightning strike at Risa. The flash of lightning shot at Risa, but before it hit, Risa's hand emitted an orange glow, and his energy pulse collided with Lucas's lightning strike. Boom! An explosion ensued. Risa and Peter Lim slid back from the shockwave. Cough. Peter Lim wasn't as powerful as Risa, and he had coughed up blood from the injuries he sustained from the explosion. Standing beside him, Risa's body had a translucent energy field engulfing it. "Get back," Risa said, and Peter Lim quickly scurried back into the hidden dark room. Risa then raised his right hand again. This time, however, Lucas was ready. He unleashed 2 lightning strikes at Risa before Risa could shoot the energy pulse at Lucas. Wham! His lightning strikes hit, but the energy field surrounding Risa's body shimmered a little after absorbing the lightning strike. Seeing this, Lucas unleashed another 2 lightning strikes at Risa. Boom! One of the lightning strikes collided with the energy pulse that Risa was finally able to shoot at Lucas. The other lightning strike hit, and the energy field surrounding Risa's body shimmered for a longer duration. Lucas saw the difference and thought that he might be close to being able to break down the energy field. Risa smirked at Lucas, but at the very next moment, he saw his view change, and soon he was looking at the ceiling. Lucas had yanked him off his feet with his shadow wielder ability. Thud! A fist came at his head, and Risa quickly tilted his head to the side. He could hear the booming of the air when the fist went past his cheeks and sliced it open. Lucas had lunged on top of him. The next moment, Lucas placed both of his palms right at Risa's head, as close as he could get to the energy field. Flickers of bright light appeared, and it gave out a blinding flash when Lucas unleashed his lightning strikes at close range. Boom! The energy field couldn't hold anymore. It shimmered for a moment, and an explosion ensued. Lucas saw the head of Risa rolling away. He quickly leaped away when he felt Risa's hands coming at his neck. Two mechanical snakes shot out from the palms of Risa's hands this time, and the mechanical snakes missed by mere inches. Lucas couldn't believe it when he saw the head of Risa had small mechanical legs coming out from the severed point on the neck. The mechanical legs then moved like spiders' legs and got Risa's head upright. Risa's left eye glowed brightly, and Lucas quickly rolled to the side. Buzz! A pulse of red laser shot out from Risa's eyes, burning right through Peter Lim's office wall. The two mechanical snakes slithered towards Lucas and opened their mouths with a syringe inside. Before they could dart towards Lucas, a white glow engulfed them, and they stopped moving. It was Haryanto using his ability trying to take control of the mechanical snakes. However, Haryanto was having a hard time doing it. Even though Risa and Haryanto had the same ability, Risa was SSS level and at master level of mastery. Far above Haryanto's SS level and adept level of mastery. Risa's head tried to get back to its body, but it realized that it couldn't. Lucas had used his shadow to grab onto the shadow of Risa's head. He then used all his strength and slammed Risa's head against the wall. Thud! Risa's head crashed into the wall, and some mechanical parts dropped out from the head. Using his shadow, Lucas pulled the head out of the wall and smashed it again into the wall. Thud! More mechanical parts dropped out of the head. The body of Risa moved and lunged at Lucas. Wham! Lucas quickly unleashed two lightning strikes at it. The lightning strikes hit, and the body of Risa was blown into pieces. However, Lucas stayed cautious as he didn't hear the notification from the system in his head. Risa wasn't dead yet. His body, strewn around on the ground, which was flesh and blood mixed with electronics and mechanical pieces, started moving on its own. Lucas placed his hands onto the ground, and ice extended from his hands towards Risa's body parts. Thud! Suddenly, a fist shot at Lucas like a bullet from within the hidden dark room. It hit, giving a loud thud, and Lucas tried to grab onto the fist with his hands. The fist slipped past the fingers of Lucas as Leroy had retracted his stretched rubbery hands immediately. "Quit playing around, old man!" Leroy's voice boomed as he appeared out from the hidden dark room. Ashen was getting impatient waiting for Risa before leaving. The head of Risa disintegrated into smaller pieces and dropped onto the ground. All the parts then flew next to Leroy and assembled back together. However, a portion of the parts were gone. The head of Risa was missing a portion of his head at his right temple. The mechanical parts were destroyed by Lucas's lightning strikes and smashing of his head onto the wall. Lucas glanced over at Haryanto and saw that he had finally taken control of the mechanical snakes. "Use these snakes to get to the hidden dark room," he spoke softly into his earbuds, and Haryanto nodded. The next moment, Lucas lunged at Leroy and Risa. Whip! Leroy whipped and hurled both his hands at Lucas. They hit, and Lucas's ribcage gave out a loud crack as it fractured. Lucas slid a few feet back from the impact. However, he ignored the pain and leaped towards Leroy and Risa again. He held his hands at Leroy and Risa's eyes. The bright flash from the lightning strikes he unleashed blinded them temporarily. "Damn you!" Leroy swung his arms and whipped his stretched-out arms in the direction of Lucas. Risa, next to Leroy, raised his hand and shot an energy pulse at Lucas blindly. Their attacks missed as Lucas had leaped back. When the energy pulse hit the wall, an explosion occurred. Meanwhile, as Leroy and Risa were dealing with Lucas, the two mechanical snakes slithered past them through the ceiling and got into the back of the hidden dark room. Chapter 92, Meeting Again. The mechanical snakes slithered and reached the back of the hidden dark room where Dr. Uva was. From the cameras of the mechanical snakes, Haryanto saw that Peter Lim was pacing around. Ashen stood calmly in his dark armor with the usual Lotus insignia. "Why don't we get away first? You can come back again to fetch them," Peter Lim said, trying to persuade Ashen to bring him to safety first with his dimensional ability. Ashen looked at him and, without any warning, grabbed Peter Lim by the neck. "Are you trying to order me around?" In a rare display of emotions, Ashen said to Peter Lim, "We gave you the technology and materials to build the devices. I suggest you know your place."
I'm... cough. Sorry.
Peter Lim coughed and struggled to breathe as Ashen tightened his grip. Ashen wasn't about to go to and fro just because there were some awakened trying to rescue Dr. Uva. He was more than confident that no one except one of the first awakened could defeat them. Haryanto had taken the opportunity while they talked to let the snakes get to Dr. Uva. Under his control, the snakes then used the mechanical surgical device to cut off the steel rope tying Dr. Uva to the chair. After they were done, the mechanical snakes slithered away into a corner and stayed still. Dr. Uva was surprised that someone had tried to come to his rescue. He pretended nothing had happened as it was obvious that it wasn't the right time to try and run away yet. Whoever it was trying to rescue him, they would need a lot of luck to deal with Ashen, Leroy, and Risa, he thought. Boom! Lucas unleashed 2 lightning strikes at Leroy and Risa. But the lightning strikes missed as Leroy made his body stretch to the side like the letter C. Risa's energy field surrounding his body was now back up. It shimmered as the lightning strike hit and stabilized again. Seeing this, Lucas changed strategy. He unleashed 2 ice spikes at Leroy and Risa. And when the ice spikes got near to them, he unleashed lightning strikes at the ice spikes. Crack! The ice spikes shattered, and the shards of sharp ice shot at Leroy and Risa. The sudden change caught Leroy and Risa by surprise. It didn't do any damage but was good enough of a distraction for Lucas to use his shadow wielder ability and grab onto Risa's body. Immediately, he hurled Risa onto Leroy with all his might. Crash! Risa crashed onto Leroy, and Leroy's stretchy body entangled with Risa. They tumbled onto the ground and crashed into the wall. Meanwhile, Rex and Riley finally got rid of all the security guards that were trying to get to the 2nd floor. Emma had also joined them and helped. "Hurry," Riley said, and they quickly ran up onto the 2nd floor. They had been very worried when they heard the sounds of explosions that were coming out from the office. When they saw Lucas and Haryanto safe and sound, they felt a sense of relief. Lucas had just smashed Risa into Leroy. Dr. Uva is in the back of the hidden dark room, Lucas said when he saw Riley, Rex, and Emma. He didn't hesitate and leaped past Leroy and Risa. "I've gotten Dr. Uva free from his restraints," Haryanto said softly into the earbuds. Leroy and Risa tried to get up and chase after him, but a rock wall rose from the ground and stopped them. "I remember you," Rex grunted when he recognized Leroy from the underground base. "Huh, and so do I." "Time to finish you off this time," Leroy smirked and said. Without any warning, he whipped his hands at Rex. Rex quickly conjured up another rock wall. Crack! It couldn't stop Leroy's fists as they penetrated the rock wall, breaking it into pieces. Emma, standing by the side, gave out a mouthful of her poison. However, the red poisonous smoke didn't deter Leroy. The poison barely burned the skin of Leroy's fists. They were traveling too fast and didn't come into much contact with her poison. Thud! Rex got hit on his chest and slid a few feet back. His heart thumped wildly from the impact, and his innards felt like they were ripped apart. Rex gritted his teeth and grabbed onto Leroy's arms. Emma and Riley then gave whatever they had at Leroy's stretched arms like a long cable. Wham! The lightning strike from Riley fried the skin of Leroy's arm, and it gave out a charred smell. Emma took a deep breath and blew out a thick red poison smoke onto the area where Riley's lightning strike hit. The poison smoke burned and got through the charred skin of Leroy. Blood seeped out from the wounds. Leroy gave out a grunt, and he swung his arm to the side. The force was too much for Rex, and he smashed into the wall. "Arg!" Rex cried out in pain when he hit the wall. "Watch out!" Emma shouted when she saw Risa with his hands raised give out a beeping sound. Riley pushed Emma away, and he leaped to the other side with Haryanto. Boom! The energy pulse hit the wall on the furthest end and caused a huge hole to appear in the mansion. By now, Leroy had changed into a puddle of flesh and darted at Riley. Wham! Riley unleashed his lightning strike at the puddle of flesh. Even though it hit, the puddle of flesh splattered into puddles of flesh, and the puddles of flesh merged again. The puddle of flesh, which was now near Riley, darted up towards him. Rex, on the other end of the room, hurled a rock spike at the puddle of flesh, but it was too fast for Rex. His injuries had made his every movement bring immense pain to him. Flickers of light appeared in Riley's hand as he accumulated his energy for his next strike. The puddle of flesh tried to twirl around Riley's body and get to his neck. Riley quickly raised his hand to the puddle of flesh. Wham! A bright flash appeared when he unleashed his lightning strike. Chapter 93. The Archbishop. Riley unleashed his lightning strike at the puddle of flesh coming up onto his chest. However, the puddle of flesh had been hit before by Riley in the underground base, so it was anticipating Riley's strike. Its real target was Rex, who was still struggling to stand up. Rex, watch out! The puddle of flesh darted away from Riley's body and shot at Rex instead. Splash! Emma came to the rescue and gave the puddle of flesh a forceful side kick, and the puddle of flesh splashed out into different puddles. She raised her legs and tried to stomp onto the puddle of flesh. Thud! The puddle of flesh slithered away and merged back together. When she saw this, Emma blew out a mouthful of poison at the puddle of flesh. Sizzle! The skin of the puddle of flesh burned and it thrashed around in pain. Emma wanted to take a deep breath and deal out another mouthful of poison at the puddle of flesh but was stopped. Beep! A beeping noise sounded from behind her, and she quickly ducked to the side. Risa fired an energy pulse from his hand. Boom! The energy pulse hit the wall of Peter Lim's office and the wall crumbled down. Out in the garden there was chaos. The guests were all scurrying to get out of the mansion. No one had any idea what had happened. All they saw were the security guards streaming into the west side of the mansion, and they got knocked out by 2 men and a woman. However, those working in the circus fair didn't run. They had gathered around the clown who was handing out balloons to the kids just moments ago. Archbishop, what should we do now? One of those working in the circus fair asked. The Archbishop, who was disguised as a clown, frowned for a moment, looked at the second floor and saw the fighting that was going on. There's someone else that's after Dr. Uva like us. Change of plan. We must try and get Dr. Uva before them. Those that were standing around him nodded, and they said, We shall not disappoint the Divined One, they said in unison while holding onto a pendant in the form of a flame. The next moment, all of them ran towards the west side of the mansion. Arg! Emma cried out in pain. Risa's right hand had broken off from his forearm and shot at Emma. It was too fast for Emma to react, and the hand grabbed onto her neck. The hand had propulsion behind it, and it gave out a loud roaring sound when it started to thrust ahead. Emma was pushed forward and smashed into the wall. Rex tried to help her but couldn't as he was entangled by the puddle of flesh. Wham! Seeing that he didn't have any choice, Riley unleashed a lightning strike at the puddle of flesh, even though it was so close to Rex. Sizzle! It hit and the puddle of flesh dropped onto the ground as Leroy was affected by the electrocution. Rex shook his head vigorously, trying to get out of his slumber as he was also affected. Harrianto wanted to help, so he had activated the mechanical snakes inside the hidden dark room again. They had finally arrived, and he controlled one of them to lunge at Risa with its open mouth. Risa swung his left arm at it and the mechanical snake was hurled away from Risa. The distraction allowed the other mechanical snake to slither up Emma's body, and it opened its mouth with the surgical apparatus to cut at Risa's hand. Thud! Risa's right hand released its grip, and it punched at the mechanical snake. The punch hit and the mechanical snake dropped onto the ground, giving out a thud. Risa's right hand flew back and connected with his forearm. He raised and stretched out his hands at Emma and Harrianto, who were standing on both his sides. Before his hands could give out that familiar beep, the Archbishop of the Divine Flame cult stormed into the room. The Archbishop pointed a toy gun at Risa and pulled the trigger. Pop! After a pop sound came out of the toy gun's barrel, part of Risa's left shoulder was blown off. Risa quickly changed his target and pointed his right hand at the Archbishop. Balloons rose from the Archbishop's back and flew towards Risa. Beep! Risa shot his energy pulse at the balloons, and when it hit the balloons, they exploded and gave out a shockwave that made everyone hurl into the air. The Archbishop pointed his toy gun at Risa. Meanwhile, Leroy had slithered next to the Archbishop and darted at the Archbishop's wrist. Just as the Archbishop was about to pull the trigger, Riley, Emma, Rex, and Harrianto didn't know who it was. But as the saying goes, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. They glanced at each other and nodded. Riley raised his hand and flickers of bright light appeared. Wham! He unleashed a lightning strike at Risa, who was in the air. The lightning strike hit, and Risa was blown into pieces. On the other side, the Archbishop opened his mouth at the puddle of flesh that was strangling his wrist. He blew out a mouthful of air at it. Pop! Popping sounds could be heard as the air the Archbishop blew out started to burst, and chunks of the puddle of flesh were blown off. Leroy dropped to the ground, and he shouted, "Old man Risa, you better play your part now." The pieces of parts on the ground that were made up of Risa started to disintegrate into small pieces. The electronics and mechanical parts from the pieces started to change form. They turned into the form of small bees next. All the bees buzzed and swarmed at those in the office. "Arg! Get away!" Everyone tried to get rid of the bees, but they were swarming in from all directions. And when the bees stung them with an energy pulse from their sting, it caused huge pain and temporarily made their limbs immobile. The energy pulse had disrupted their control of their bodies. The puddle of flesh wriggled in excitement as Leroy got ready to go in for the kill. Chapter 94. Cleanse their evil. Archbishop. The other members of the Divine Flame cult finally arrived at the office. They cried out when they saw the Archbishop kneeling on his knees, struggling to regain control of his body. One of the members took out a cylindrical container and he closed his eyes before he opened the lid. "Let the flames of the Divine One cleanse their evil." All of the members shouted, and a white glow appeared from the container. The white glow started to become bigger and bigger when it got out. Whoosh! It shot out white flames at the bees. Some of the bees which were on their way to swarm the white glow got hit and they were disintegrated into ashes immediately. The puddle of flesh darted at the white glow, but when it got near, Leroy gave out a loud scream of pain and part of the puddle of flesh got evaporated. The smell of burnt flesh filled the air. The tide had turned in an instant. "Go into that dark room. Dr. Uva and Peter Lim must be inside. Kill them on sight." The Archbishop glanced at his cult members and ordered. The order from the Divine One was clear. Those who seek to control the demonic beasts for their own gain shall be executed. Riley, Rex, and Emma looked on anxiously as they tried to regain control of their limbs. Meanwhile, Lucas had heard all the commotion outside and the cries of pain from Riley, Rex, and Emma. He knew he had to save Dr. Uva and finish off Ashen as fast as possible. Time was of the essence. Wham! He unleashed 2 lightning strikes at Ashen, but the lightning strikes went into the void when 2 dark openings appeared out of thin air. Ashen raised his hands and the next moment, they were covered in a dark glow like the dark openings. Crack! Lucas saw Ashen lunge at him with his hands. He stomped onto the ground and an ice wall 9 feet thick rose from the ground. However, to his surprise, Ashen's hands swiped across the ice wall, and the part of the ice wall that was in contact with his hand disappeared into the ether. Lucas tried to use his Shadow Wielder ability but realized the room was too dark. Whoosh! He leaped away in the nick of time when Ashen's hands swiped down at his head. Ashen leaped after him and gave him a roundhouse kick. Thud! The foot landed onto Lucas's crossed arms in front of his body, and Lucas slid back for a couple of feet. He could feel the pain emanating from the bones of his forearms. They had been fractured and his SSS-level physique ability got to work immediately. He gritted his teeth and grabbed onto the ankle of Ashen. Ashen tried to break free, but his eyes opened wide when he realized that Lucas was much stronger than him. Thud! With a tug, Lucas pulled hard on Ashen's leg, and it forced Ashen to fall onto the ground, giving out a muted thud. Lucas pulled back his arm and wanted to punch Ashen's head, but he stopped. A dark opening appeared in front of Ashen. Ashen kicked at the ground and he spun around towards Lucas. He stretched out his hands covered in the dark glow. Lucas leaped away and dodged Ashen's hands. Flickers of light appeared on Lucas's hands, and he unleashed 2 lightning strikes at Ashen, who had gotten up on his feet. Ashen smirked and 2 dark openings appeared again. However, it was not what he expected. Ashen felt a sudden pull on his legs and he fell onto the ground. Lucas had made use of the lightning strike to cast a shadow and use his shadow wielder ability to surprise attack Ashen. He placed his hands onto the ground and the ice extended towards Ashen. Ashen tried to roll away from the ice, but in the direction where Ashen was rolling towards, ice spikes appeared in the air and shot down at Ashen when he came close. Thud! Some of the ice spikes hit and barely penetrated through Ashen's dark armor, giving out a loud thud. Dr. Uva now! Lucas shouted, and Dr. Uva stood up and made a dash out of the dark room. Peter Lim, who was cowering in one corner of the room, lunged at Dr. Uva and tried to stop him. Thud! Lucas gave Peter Lim a flying kick to his waist and sent Peter Lim smashing into the wall. Cough! Peter Lim coughed out blood and collapsed onto the ground unconsciously. That's him! Kill him! Members of the Divine Flame cult recognized Dr. Uva, and they shouted. They conjured fireballs and hurled the fireballs at Dr. Uva. Lucas stomped onto the ground and an ice wall rose in front of Dr. Uva. Boom! The fireballs hit the ice wall and shards of the ice wall flew in all directions. Arg! Some of the cult members cried out in pain as the debris penetrated their bodies. Lucas grabbed onto Dr. Uva and charged through the ice wall with his shoulder. The cult members who were in his way were hurled into the air and tumbled across the ground when they got knocked away by Lucas. When he got behind all the cult members, he took out his grenade launcher from his dark matter vault armor. Pong! 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 The sounds of the grenades launching sounded as Lucas fired off all that he had. Boom! Then the ground shook as the grenades exploded. The ceiling fell as the dark room crumbled from the explosions. Lucas, Riley, Rex, Emma, and Harrianto cried out in joy when they saw Lucas safe and sound. But the joy was short-lived. The Archbishop, Leroy, and Risa turned their attention to Lucas. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Watch out! Riley shouted. Pop! The Archbishop had raised his hand, pointed his toy gun at Lucas, and pulled the trigger. Riley's warning gave Lucas a heads-up and he leaped away with Dr. Uva on his back. Boom! The air cannon from the Archbishop hit the wall of the office and it crumbled from the ensuing explosion. Everyone run! Riley gave the instruction and the other team members and Lucas leaped out from the crumbled wall. Thud! They landed onto the lawn of the garden and got ready to run towards the cars parked in the car park. But a slit appeared, and it opened up. Ashen walked out of the opening with Peter Lim unconscious in his hands. Chapter 95. Perish. Ashen dropped Peter Lim to the ground and raised his hands. His hands were engulfed with the familiar dark glow. The dark glow wriggled and darted out towards Lucas. Lucas leaped away to the side and dodged the dark glow. Whoosh! Along the path of the dark glow, everything that it touched disappeared into the void. The lawn, the soil, and even part of the mansion were gone in an instant. Ashen then swiped his hands towards the direction where Lucas had leaped to. The dark glow followed Ashen's movement. It whipped across horizontally. Riley, Rex, Emma, and Harrianto had to leap in the opposite direction and dodge the dark glow. Plop! The Archbishop, Risa, and Leroy leaped down onto the lawn from the office that they were in earlier. Riley saw the Archbishop aim his toy gun at Lucas. Before he could pull the trigger, he unleashed a lightning strike at the Archbishop. Wham! The lightning strike hit, and the Archbishop's toy gun flew out of his right hand. Blood dripped from the Archbishop's hand. His hand was now a mangled mess with the skin charred and flesh exposed from the wound. The Archbishop gave out an angry roar and he lunged at Riley. Thud! The Archbishop was surprisingly fast, and Riley was knocked off his feet. Taking in a deep breath, the Archbishop prepared to unleash an air cannon from his mouth. Emma blew out a mouthful of her poison at the Archbishop, making him stop. The Archbishop leaped away from the cloud of red poison smoke. Rex quickly pulled Riley away. However, Risa, who was now back in human form, unleashed his hands at Rex. His hands flew and grabbed onto Rex's neck. Crack. The rocks covering Rex's neck began to crack. But Rex didn't stop, and he continued to pull Riley out of danger, despite the pain from his chest and suffocation by Risa's hands. Emma tried to help, but the puddle of flesh snapped and wrapped around her legs, tripping her onto the ground. Leroy then slithered and wrapped around her legs. Arg! Emma gave out a loud cry in pain as her legs fractured from Leroy's strangle. Haryanto couldn't help much without any mechanical or electronic parts. He glanced over at the armored cars parked in the car park not far away. Running with all his might, Haryanto made a dash for the armored car. Whip! Leroy's hand appeared from the puddle of flesh and whipped at Haryanto. He was immediately pulled back and hurled onto the ground. Things weren't looking too great for the team. Lucas knew he had to do something quick. Whoosh! Ashen didn't give him any time to think. The dark glow came at him from both his sides. Lucas had to leap back and dodge it. When he landed, the next thing he saw was the dark glow coming down at him from the top. Ashen had swung his arms and made the dark glow whip down at him. Bam! The dark glow came down and carved out a tunnel in an instant. All the soil was gone into the void. Lucas had rolled to the side, escaping narrowly. You can put me down. That man wants something from me. He is not going to kill me, Dr. Uva said, trying to make it easier for Lucas. Upon hearing this, Lucas hurled Dr. Uva into a bush that was not far away. When he saw that Dr. Uva landed safely, flickers of lightning appeared in his hands. Wham! The lightning strike shot at Ashen. Lucas didn't wait and lunged at Ashen immediately. As he had expected, dark openings appeared in front of Ashen and absorbed the lightning strikes. As he got nearer, his shadow moved and held onto the arms of Ashen, pulling them down to the side of Ashen's body. Thud! Lucas gave Ashen a left hook to his face. It jolted Ashen's head, and his head spun to the side. Blood spurted out from the slice wound that Lucas's fist had caused. Lucas followed up with an uppercut, and he could hear the crack of Ashen's jaw when his fist connected with it. He wanted to continue with another left hook to Ashen's waist, but was stopped. Thud! Ashen raised his leg and gave him a frontal kick to his chest. Lucas slid a few feet back, and he ignored the pain caused by the kick. His SSS-level physique ability had already started the healing process. But when he got near, Ashen gave out a loud roar and his body was covered in the dark glow. Lucas's shadow's hold on Ashen's arms was immediately cut off. Wham! He unleashed 2 lightning strikes at Ashen, trying to see if the dark glow was like Risa's energy field. It wasn't. The dark glow on Ashen's body took in the lightning strike and it remained steady, engulfing his body. No flicker or shimmer could be seen. Lucas figured the only way to exhaust the dark glow was to wait for Ashen to expend all his energy on his ability. Using higher-level techniques like these, which required master level of mastery, would take up more energy than normal techniques. But time was not on his side. He glanced over at Riley, Rex, Haryanto, and Emma. They were struggling and trying their best to fend off the Archbishop, Leroy, and Risa. Haryanto, who was pulled back by Leroy's hand, tried to get to the nearest armored car, but for every inch he moved, he got yanked back onto the ground again. Emma blew her poison smoke at the puddle of flesh strangling her leg, which was now soaked in her own blood. At the other end, Riley and Rex weren't faring any better. Rex was trying his best to break free from Risa's hands, while Riley accumulated his energy for his next lightning strike. Wham! Lucas unleashed a lightning strike at the Archbishop when he saw the Archbishop running towards Dr. Uva. Arg! The lightning strike hit the Archbishop's knee, and the Archbishop tumbled onto the ground. You! The Archbishop shouted angrily at Lucas. He reached into his clown costume with his remaining good hand and took out a cylindrical container. The Archbishop opened it and hurled it at Lucas. Perish in the divine flame. Chapter 96. Sirens. A white glow appeared from the container, and it slowly floated up into the air. White flames shot out from the white glow at Lucas and Ashen. Lucas quickly conjured up an ice wall to block the flames coming at him. To his surprise, the flames burrowed through the ice wall as if it were butter and continued their trajectory. Lucas leaped to the side and one of the white flames brushed past his left arm. His dark matter vault armor gave out a blue glow, but it was useless against the white flame. A chunk of his skin and flesh was burnt by the white flame. His SSS-level physique ability kicked in and the flesh wriggled and started to grow back. But it was much slower than usual and would take a few minutes for it to be healed. Lucas tried, but he couldn't move his left arm, and he had to battle with his right arm until the wound healed. Ashen, on the other hand, had it much easier. His dark glow absorbed the white flames and disappeared into the void. Lucas thought about all the options he had to get everyone out of this dire situation. Finally, he decided to give it a try to summon Sheba. He focused and tried to summon Sheba from his summon space. However, there was silence as usual. Pop! He gritted his teeth and dodged away from the air cannon the Archbishop had released from his mouth. Lucas saw that the Archbishop didn't give up and tried to limp towards Dr. Uva. The next moment, he felt a gust of wind went past him. Ashen had lunged at the Archbishop to stop him from killing Dr. Uva. Lucas took the opportunity and tried to summon Sheba again. This time a familiar thought appeared in his mind. Sheba! Lucas exclaimed silently and summoned Sheba. An orange glow appeared in the vicinity near Emma. When the orange glow subsided, Sheba stood tall, now at half the height of Lucas, and it growled at Leroy. Sheba was now much bigger and looked different. The scales on its body gave out shimmers of different colors when light hit them. The horns on its head had grown out. Snap! It bit onto Leroy's stretched arms that were holding onto Haryanto. The arm broke into halves and Haryanto was finally free. Sheba didn't stop and it turned and tried to take a bite at the puddle of flesh next. A chunk of the flesh was ripped off from the puddle. Leroy quickly let go of Emma's leg and slithered away from Sheba. Sheba gave chase, but Risa's hands came flying in at it. Opening its huge, wide mouth, Sheba didn't think much of it and swallowed Risa's hands. It then turned its focus and lunged at Risa instead. And all that Risa saw was a dark shimmer coming at him. He had no chance to react. Sheba's speed was now 3 times faster than it was. Snap! This time, Sheba chewed off the left leg of Risa, making him fall to the ground. It went for his head next, but Risa's head flew out from its body. What is this demonic beast? Fear struck through Risa's mind as he couldn't comprehend what was going on. He saw Sheba open its huge mouth. Mechanical and electronic parts appeared out of it, and they started to assemble into a mechanical version of Sheba. The mechanical version of Sheba went after Risa's head and Sheba went after Leroy. Leroy had exhausted his energy and turned back into his human form. Ashen! Do something! Leroy shouted at Ashen. A slit appeared in the air behind Leroy, and it opened. Leroy immediately jumped into the dark opening with Risa's head following closely behind. Just as Sheba was about to get near, the opening closed. Growl! Sheba growled at how close it was to getting to Leroy. Meanwhile, Ashen took out a chunk of meat from the Archbishop's waist, and the Archbishop mumbled something in his mouth. Soon, white flames started to engulf the Archbishop. He wanted to make a final dash at Dr. Uva but couldn't. Ashen had used his hand and swiped at his legs, making them disappear into the void. Curse you, Shadow Lotus! The Divine One shall not let you off! The Archbishop shouted as the white flames slowly turned him into ashes. Lucas was ready when he saw Ashen turn back towards him. Before Ashen could unleash his dark glow at Lucas, the mechanical Sheba came from the side, and it tried to bite onto Ashen's neck. Ashen swung his arm at it, and the dark glow gobbled up all the mechanical and electronic parts it came into contact with. This was, however, a distraction. Sheba came lunging in from behind. It opened its wide mouth and snapped at Ashen's arm. Ashen's eyes opened wide when he saw what happened next. Sheba's sharp fangs dug into his arm, going through the dark glow as if it wasn't there. Pain was all that he felt. He could hear his bones crunching as Sheba's bite tightened. What's worse was his dark glow disappearing as it was sucked in by Sheba. Ashen knew he had to get away quickly. Wham! Lucas unleashed lightning strikes at Ashen with his hands the moment he saw Ashen's dark glow disappear. Bladder. The lightning strikes hit and flesh from Ashen's body splattered out into the surroundings. Lucas then lunged at Ashen for the final blow. However, Ashen engulfed his free hand with the dark glow and chopped at his other hand that was bitten by Sheba. Ashen broke free with blood spurting out from his broken arm. A slit appeared in the air behind Ashen, and it opened. He leaped into the dark opening, and he stared at Lucas as it closed. This time Lucas had successfully stopped them from achieving their mission. "Nice to see you again, buddy," Lucas said and patted Sheba's head as usual. Sheba was also glad to see Lucas again. It tried to rub its head against Lucas's leg, but Lucas stumbled back. Sheba was now too large for it to do so. "Everyone all right?" Lucas asked when he saw Riley, Rex and Emma helping each other, limping and hobbling towards him. "I know a very good healer. She should be able to get you back into shape." Dr. Uva, who was now standing next to Lucas, interjected. He continued, "I think it's best we make a move. Everyone is under the control of Peter Lim, including the security forces." Just as Dr. Uva was speaking, sirens wailed in the distance. "Hop on," Haryanto shouted as he started the engine of the armored car. Chapter 97. Secret Lab. Lucas quickly summoned Sheba back into his summon space. After he was done, he got onto the armored car together with Dr. Uva and the other team members, as fast as they could. Even before Rex could close the door, Haryanto stepped on the accelerator. Crash. The armored car crashed through the iron gates of the mansion. "Hang on tight," Haryanto said as he drove the armored car towards a security force patrol car in the narrow road. His hands glowed with the white glow and the white glow darted into the steering wheel. Screech. The armored car did a sudden turn, and the sudden jerk made it tilt onto its left side. Its bottom scraped past the top of the security force patrol car by mere inches. "Stop right there," the security force officer inside the car shouted through the loudspeakers of the patrol car. But it was all in frustration as they needed to make a U-turn. Haryanto switched to a higher gear and stepped on the accelerator, leaving a trail of smoke behind. After a few minutes, Haryanto saw the security patrol car coming close again from the rearview mirror. "They are closing in," he said. "Let me handle it," Lucas replied, and he shifted to the seat next to the car door. He opened the door and ice extended out from his hands onto the road. The ice covered the road surface as the armored car traveled along. After he was done, he closed the door. Screech. Sounds of tires screeching could be heard a few moments later when the security force patrol car skidded along the ice-covered road. "I have a secret lab 20 miles away. I'll guide you there," Dr. Uva said and started to guide Haryanto along the way. It was a relatively uneventful journey after that, and they arrived at the secret lab. The so-called secret lab was a house fully painted in red, and the neighborhood looked like a posh suburb. Many houses had their own personality and unique architecture designs. Some were built with glass all over, others were antique-looking built with logs. Margaret opened the door. "It's me." Dr. Uva walked up to the red house, pressed on the doorbell and spoke into the doorbell mic. A sweet voice then replied, "Welcome back, Dr. Uva." The door opened and a woman in her 30s, dressed in a yellow dress, was standing behind it. "I have some friends injured. See if you can get them back into shape." Dr. Uva entered the house and motioned the others to follow. "You can park the car in the garage by the side of the house." He took a remote control from a basket that was next to the door and passed it to Haryanto. Haryanto nodded and got back into the armored car. When Lucas got into the house, it looked like an ordinary house. There was furniture, TV, sofa, and even a pool back in the yard. It didn't look like a lab at all. "I know what you are thinking about, follow me," Dr. Uva said and led them down into the basement. The basement was dark, but when Dr. Uva pressed his hand against a wall, a print of his palm glowed on the wall, and moments later, a voice boomed. "Personnel verified." Immediately, the wall split open in the middle, and both halves slid to the sides. Behind the wall was a concealed lab with containers of what looked like organs. Lucas recognized some of them as there were demonic beast cores still attached to the organs. There are some experiments I didn't want anyone to know. At least not yet, Dr. Uva said as he sat down onto his desk, with test tubes laid on top of it. Margaret led Riley, Rex and Emma to sit on a row of chairs and started her healing process. Dr. Uva spoke as she healed them. I suppose Rodney saved my life indirectly this time, and I thought that he was giving me troubles when he called me. Let me introduce myself. I'm Dr. Uva. I've been researching on how to control the demonic beasts throughout my life. Lucas and the other team members waved and introduced themselves. Why would they need you when they already have this? Lucas said and took out the device they found in South Battle Administration area. They were able to gather the demonic beasts and create a beast horde with devices like this. Dr. Uva picked up the device and inspected it closely. He brought the device up to the light to see what the substance was that Rodney was talking about. I've never seen this before. Dr. Uva frowned and stood up. He disassembled the device and poured the substance into a test tube. After that, he placed the test tube into a machine at the back of the lab. We shall see whether this specialized spectrometer of mine for demonic beasts can analyze it. And maybe it can also tell me why they needed to abduct me for my research. Dr. Uva said and pushed a button, and the machine closed its door. Whirling sound could be heard as it started the analyzing process. By now, Riley, Rex and Emma were healed and their faces looked healthier. I've got energy bars if you want them. Lucas took out some energy bars from his dark matter vault armor and offered them to the other team members. They took them and quickly had a bite. After the long battle and injuries, they needed to replenish their energy. When Dr. Uva saw this, he slapped his forehead and said, "Silly old me. You are my saviors. Margaret here can whip up a sumptuous meal if you want. Wait here while I get to it." Margaret gave them a smile and left the lab for the kitchen. Rex glanced over at Dr. Uva and Margaret, trying to figure out their relationship. But Emma nudged at him and gave him a cold stare, warning him not to be a busybody. While they were waiting for the meal and the spectrometer to do its work, Lucas asked, "So, how do we get back to the South Battle Administration area?" Chapter 98 $1 Million Team. Only thing I could think of is to seek help from Rodney. Lucas thought that the only option for them left was to seek help from Rodney. If the security forces were as corrupted to be under the control of Peter Lim, then they would have a hard time convincing them that Peter Lim abducted Dr. Uva and worked with the Shadow Lotus. The only way for them was authority outside of the West Battle Administration area, or they would have to fight their way out. But how would they travel across the vast terrains occupied by demonic beasts? Riley and the team members frowned. They took out their phones and Lucas was right. All over the social media apps and news were articles and videos of them being assailants, trying to kill Peter Lim. The governor had placed a wanted warrant for them with a $5 million reward for each of them. Ha! $5 million? Maybe I should give myself up? Rex said jokingly as he kept his phone. Emma patted his shoulder and said, "Maybe I should give you up to them." Lucas and the other members burst out laughing. Rex mumbled and didn't say anything. He recalled how Emma had tried to save his life earlier. They were all dependable teammates. "Maybe I can help," Dr. Uva interjected and said, "I know some of the people that provide me with these, smuggling through the city's protective walls." He pointed at the containers with the organs and tissues of demonic beasts. "You might be able to arrange for Rodney to pick us up outside of the city. After all, I need to get away to safety too," Dr. Uva said. "That sounds like a plan," Riley said and called Rodney. After Riley briefed Rodney on what had happened, Rodney wasn't too pleased. "I will go to the Center Battle Administration and speak to the leader himself." Riley could hear him slamming his fist onto the table. A moment of silence later, Rodney spoke again. "Call me again when you get out of the city. I will arrange a flight to pick you up." He ended the call after that. The next moment, Margaret came into the lab with Haryanto. They had plates with different cuisines in their hands. Soon, the sterile smell of alcohol in the lab was replaced with the aroma from the dishes. Margaret and Haryanto then placed the dishes onto Dr. Yui's desk. Tuck in. Hope it's to your liking. Margaret waved at Lucas and the rest to come over to the desk. Lucas walked over and saw the nicely plated meals. There was steak, spaghetti, roast chicken, and grilled vegetables. Rex licked his lips and tucked in first. They rolled their eyes at him and joined him. It didn't take long for them to finish the dishes. Margaret took the empty plates and went up to the kitchen to wash them. While she was doing so, she noticed through the window there were cars cruising slowly along the streets, as if they were on the lookout for something. One of the men inside the car met her eyes, and she remained calm and continued with what she was doing. Found something? The officer next to the man asked. No, it was some housewife doing the dishes. Go further down this street. They must be around here somewhere, the man said, and the officer drove slowly down the street. After they were gone, Margaret hurriedly went down the basement and into the lab. They are out patrolling the streets searching. When Lucas and the others heard her, they knew they didn't have much time left before they were found. There must have been SSS-level trackers activated and were on their way. How much longer for the spectrometer to finish? Lucas asked. Dr. Uva stood up, walked over to the machine and checked. The status bar was at 90%. 10 more minutes, he said. Better arrange for those smugglers to get ready soon. But tell them you are bringing a research team out of the city for research. Lucas prompted him. Their bounty of $5 million per head was definitely attractive to these smugglers. Oh yes. Dr. Uva nodded and picked up his phone. The other party picked it up rather quickly, and Dr. Uva told them about his request. They hesitated for a moment before agreeing to it. Things are tight right now. I can't guarantee it would be successful. You got to pay me more than usual for taking this risk. Deal, Dr. Uva said without hesitation. Hee. Always a pleasure to do business with you. Pay the money to the usual account. The other party said and ended the call. You have anything for disguise? Lucas asked without much hope. Yes, we have some for the annual Ghost Festival. To his surprise, Margaret gave a positive reply. The annual Ghost Festival was a holiday where everyone went around disguised as demons and ghosts. It wouldn't be the best, but they didn't have much of an option. Car drove near the Red House. Inside the car was a security force officer driving, and a man with his eyes covered by a piece of yellow cloth sat beside the driver's seat. In the back seat, a couple was smooching with each other. The man with covered eyes tapped the security officer's shoulder, signaling him to stop. Found something? The security officer stopped and asked. Along the way, the man with his eyes covered did so umpteen times. But it was always drive on as an answer next. So, the security officer sat back on the backrest and waited, not expecting anything from the man. The man with his eyes covered then focused and activated his ability. Red glow engulfed his body the next moment. Imagery made up of red and black particles appeared in his mind. Slowly, what appeared was the scene of the Red House when the sun didn't even come out. Then it went into fast-forward mode with the sun rising. Nothing unusual happened next. Margaret took out the trash and went back into the house. A few moments later, the armored car appeared. Dr. Uva and the others appeared. The red glow engulfing the man subsided, and he said to the security officer, Got it. They are inside the house. Chapter 99, Peter and Jane. The couple sitting behind in the back seat stopped smooching with each other. Peter, you just turned me on so bad. We have time for more later, Jane. Peter wiped his mouth with his sleeve and placed his hand onto the man with covered eyes. Paul, wait, he said. Paul turned his head over at Peter. But with his covered eyes, Peter couldn't see what Paul's expression was. Wait for what? Time for us to call backup and get those bastards. The security force officer wanted to pick up the radio receiver and call for backup. Peter grabbed onto his hand and stopped the security force officer. Seeing her boyfriend's action, Jane stepped in and held onto the security force officer's neck from behind. What? Let go of me. Are you with them? The security force officer tried to struggle free but couldn't. He was no match for S-level awakened like Peter and Jane. Paul, with his covered eyes, sat in his seat and waited for Peter to give him an explanation. Are you dumb or what? Peter grabbed the radio receiver from the security force officer's hand and said, "Think about it. That's $5 million per head. The four of us could get what? $6 million each if we apprehend them. If you call backup, what will we get instead?" The security force officer and Paul went silent and pondered for a moment. Seeing that they were on the line, Peter upped the ante and said, "Come on, we can deal with them. The reports were that they got seriously injured. Nothing we can't deal with." It worked. Paul and the security force officer nodded to Peter's suggestion. The high reward was too attractive for them to give up. 95%. Dr. Uva paced around and checked the progression of the spectrometer machine impatiently. Lucas and the other team members were now in different disguises. He had a duck cap and wore a fake mustache. Rex had long dreadlocks. Riley cut and dyed his blue hair brown. Emma also cut and dyed her hair black. She also changed into Margaret's shirt and jeans. Haryanto used his ability and let some electronics from the house cover his eyes and arms. 98%. Dr. Uva stopped and looked at the screen on the spectrometer when it reached 98%. 2 more minutes, he announced. "I will get the armored car ready," Haryanto said, and pressed the button for the entrance of the lab to open. When he got out, he heard footsteps on top. The wooden floor creaked as Peter, Jane, Paul, and the security force officer walked around searching for them. Haryanto immediately raised his right hand, signaling to the others that there was someone in the house. The mechanical and electronic parts on his arm turned into a plasma cannon. "I'll go and help," Lucas said and walked over to Haryanto. He led the way up the staircase of the basement slowly. "Paul, do your thing and see where they are," Peter said impatiently after searching the whole house and not finding a person in sight. Paul, who was already exhausted from using his ability earlier, gave out a sigh. He sat down onto the sofa and activated his ability. The red glow appeared and engulfed him again. Slowly he saw the red and black particles forming into imagery. He saw people going down the basement. Paul stood up and pointed at the entrance to the basement. But before he could speak, the door opened. Lucas fired 2 shots at Paul's knees with his pistol. "Arg!" Paul fell forward onto the ground, giving out a cry. "What happened?" Peter came running over, and when he saw Lucas aiming his pistol at him, he quickly pulled the sofa and rolled behind it. The security force officer came rushing in next, but Lucas turned his arm and shot at the security force officer's shoulder. Bladder. It hit and the security force officer sprawled onto the ground. Lucas turned his focus back onto Peter. He placed his hands onto the ground and the ice extended out towards the sofa. The next moment, Peter leaped out from the sofa and lunged at Lucas. Peter's eyes opened wide when he saw flickers of light appearing in Lucas's hands. Wham! Lucas unleashed a lightning strike at Peter. And to Lucas's surprise, Peter splashed out and turned into a puddle of water which dissipated immediately. Suddenly, he felt a gust of wind coming at him and he quickly ducked. Another Peter had lunged out at him from the sofa. Thud! An ice wall rose and Peter could only hit the ice wall. His punch couldn't do much to it. Lucas used his shoulder and charged at the ice wall. The ice cracked and shards of ice from the ice wall shot out at Peter. Thud! Some of the ice shards got through Peter's body. The force hurled him back and the ice shards nailed him to the wall.
No.
Jane, who was on the second floor of the house, came down and saw what happened. She turned toward Lucas and raised her hands at him. Lucas was ready to unleash an ice spike at her, but he felt a force pulling his arms down. Seeing this, Haryanto aimed his plasma cannon he had on his arm at her. Before he could fire the plasma shot at her, he too felt a force pulling his arm downward. Lucas lunged at her next, and Jane quickly tried to use her S-level gravity ability to force Lucas down onto the ground. Thud! Suddenly, Jane felt a pull on her ankles, and she fell backward onto the ground. Lucas had used his shadow wielder ability and yanked her onto the ground. The very next thing that Jane saw was his fist coming down at her. She raised her arms trying to block it but couldn't. Crack! The bones of her forearms gave out a loud cracking sound as they fractured from Lucas's fist. Lucas pulled back his fist and slammed it down at Jane's head. Thud! It made Jane's head crash through the wooden floorboard. Broken pieces of wood flew in all directions. Jane lay motionlessly as she was now unconscious. Arg! Jane. Peter, who was now free from the ice shards, grunted out from behind. Lucas stood up and turned around. He frowned as there were now 4 Peters standing side by side. Chapter 100, Smugglers. 2 of them lunged at Haryanto and 2 of them lunged at Lucas. One of them leaped onto the wall and kicked at it, while the other came straight towards Lucas. Whoosh! Lucas conjured up 2 ice spikes and shot them at the 2 Peters coming at him. Splash! The Peter who kicked onto the wall splashed out and turned into a puddle of water. The other one, the real Peter, gave out a loud cry when the ice spike penetrated his waist. But he didn't stop. Another Peter appeared out of his body and lunged at Lucas. Thud! Before the 5th Peter's punch could get near Lucas, Lucas gave it a right hook, and it got hurled to the side instead. The 5th Peter smashed into the wall and dripped down onto the ground into a puddle, dissipating the next moment. Lucas lunged at the real Peter next and gave him a jab to his head. The impact made Peter spin in the air, and when he fell onto the ground, he lay motionless. When Lucas glanced over at Haryanto, Haryanto was also done with the fake Peters made up of water. He then walked over to the security force officer and lifted his head up with his hand. "Please, I have a family waiting for me. Let me go." The security force officer begged for his life. Lucas lifted the security force officer by his shirt and carried him over to the patrol car. "Radio your colleagues and say that you've found us. Make sure it's far away from here," he said to the security force officer, squeezing his hand, which was strangling the security force officer's neck. "Stop! I'll do it," the security force officer said. He cursed himself silently as he picked up the radio receiver. What was he thinking? He shouldn't have believed Peter. Lucas didn't seem to be slightly injured, and in fact, Lucas was the most powerful awakened he had ever seen before. Never had he seen anyone with the ability to wield several abilities. The security force officer knew that he would be dead if Lucas wanted to do so. So, with that in mind, the security force officer did what Lucas instructed. "Command, O2 car speaking, we've found the assailants." "Over," he spoke into the radio receiver. "Roger. O2 car, report assailant's location and wait for backup. Do not engage." "I repeat, do not engage," the command center replied. "We are at Helm Street, number 666. All units divert to Helm Street, number 666. After he was done, the security force officer shook his head. Even the command center knew not to try and engage Lucas and the rest. "Thanks," Lucas said with a smile and with his fist knocked the security force officer out cold. He put the security force officer into the patrol car and closed the door. Sirens wailed as the other cars stepped on the gas and rushed towards the reported location. Lucas and Haryanto went back down to the basement. "It's completed," Dr. Uva exclaimed, and he immediately downloaded the reports into his portable storage device. "Time for us to go," Riley stood up and said. He tried to brush his long blue hair but realized that it was cut. The other team members also stood up and waited as Dr. Uva packed the necessary stuff he needed. The device and the substance and some research samples of his were put into a briefcase. They got out of the lab and got into the armored car. Fortunately for them, the armored car was as big as an MPV and had enough space for 8 people. "Drive to the edge of the city. There's a warehouse where the smuggling gang is," Dr. Uva said. "Hang on," Haryanto replied and stepped on the pedal. The armored car's engine roared and they headed towards the edge of the city. The journey to the edge of the city was uneventful as the security forces were busy traveling in the opposite direction. They arrived at the warehouse, which was huge and surprisingly well kept. Men in thick uniforms smoked outside the vicinity while on their break. They walked around trying to make their bodies warm up. It was cold inside the warehouse as it was a cold storage for food supplies and even bodies of demonic beasts they were smuggling into the city. As the armored car approached, one of the men stared at it. His stern expression turned into a smile when he recognized Dr. Uva sitting next to Haryanto. He raised his hand, motioning for the car to stop. Haryanto did so, and the man came up next to the armored car. The side window glass wound down on Dr. Yui's side. "Nice to see you, Doc. How can we help you?" The man greeted Dr. Uva and took a quick glance at the others sitting inside the armored car. Lucas got ready to make a move if required. "I need to go out with these researchers to gather more samples." "Keen knows about it," Dr. Uva said. The man glanced at Lucas and the others again. He pondered for a moment before giving them a smile. "Keen is at his usual place. Come on in." The man then directed Haryanto where to park his car. Haryanto nodded and drove the armored car to the car park. They alighted and Dr. Uva led them into the warehouse. The workers inside, surprisingly, focused on their work and didn't even glance at them as they walked past. Keen was in his office in a corner of the warehouse. "Knock." Dr. Uva knocked on the door to the office. "Come in." A voice boomed from inside. Dr. Uva opened the door, and they entered the office. "Ha ha ha ha!" A loud burst of laughter ensued after they entered. Lucas got himself ready to act. "Relax," Keen said, and he stood up from his seat. "Your disguises are pretty unique," he said, and everyone went into full alert mode. Lucas immediately pulled Dr. Uva to the back. "I know who you are and what you did, but it's none of my concern. Business is business. We smuggle with no questions asked. And if you think I'll be greedy for the reward money, it's a no from me," Keen said and lit up a cigarette. "Besides, what do you take me for? Those corrupt security forces?" he said and raised his hand, offering everyone a cigarette.